Welcome to another enlightening episode of The Truth About the Plant, the show that takes you on a journey through the world of psychoactive plants and alternative wellness, all while delivering the real, actionable insights you crave. I'm your host, Christina Dees. This is my equally talented co-host, Dr. Amanda Ryman. Dr. Ryman, you want to tell them why we're here?
Absolutely. So we're here because it can be really difficult to find accurate, evidence-informed information about psychoactive plants on the internet. You might look up a question and get hundreds of responses, many of which even contradict each other. So we are here to give you the lowdown, to give you the truth. Think of us as your really cool aunties, your kick-ass granddaughters, ladies that are here to make sure that you have the information you need in order to develop safe, balanced relationships with psychoactive plants.
That's right. Cannabinoid connoisseurs and THC aficionados, today's topic is as mysterious as the high it brings. What is Delta 8 THC? So join us as we unravel the enigma, separate the highs from the lows, and take a mind-bending journey into the lesser-known sibling of the THC family, Delta 8 THC. Well, I'm excited about this episode because I live in North Carolina where cannabis is not legal. And I see Delta 8 products being sold pretty much everywhere. My first question is, how can this be? How is this possible to sell a Delta 8 product that gets people high?
Well, this is really interesting. And a lot of times when we have restrictions and prohibition, out of that comes innovation. And this is definitely an example of that. So Delta 8 THC comes from hemp. And hemp is defined as a cannabis plant, basically, that has less than 0.3% of Delta 9 THC. Now, hemp is federally legal, and therefore it is legal in all 50 states. Now, a few years ago, scientists figured out a way to take CBD, which is in the hemp plant and is legal, from the hemp plant and to transform it into an intoxicating cannabinoid with a structure very similar to Delta 9 THC, which is naturally occurring in the plant, and they call it Delta 8. Now, because this is made from a legal hemp product, the assumption is that Delta 8 is legal as well. And that is why you see it being sold in states that do not have access to adult use cannabis.
So Delta 8 is legal in every state then?
Well, not anymore. See, the feds kind of had to play catch up because it is being synthesized from a federally legal plant. No states had any laws on the books that particularly prohibited Delta 8 or regulated Delta 8 because, to be honest, they really didn't see it coming. So now that it's been in the market for a few years, we're starting to see the states respond. So some states have banned Delta 8 completely. So, for example, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, and New York. Some have moved to restrict it, but not ban it. For example, Virginia, Minnesota, and Michigan. And California is working on a way to regulate it.
So why would a state decide to ban Delta 8 if it's made from legal hemp?
Well, in some situations in states where cannabis is legal, the bans are for the most part driven by not wanting the highly regulated cannabis market to have to compete with a loosely regulated hemp market. So, for example, if you're in Oregon or Washington where adult use cannabis is legal and you're a cannabis business, there's a very high bar to entry. You have to get your license. You have to get everything tested according to the state rules. Everything has to be manufactured according to the state rules. Everything has to be sold according to the state rules, which means you could only sell products in a dispensary. On the other side, you have the hemp market. And even though there are some rules around the testing and manufacture of hemp products, they can be sold pretty much anywhere, as you see in North Carolina. And so it doesn't really put the regulated cannabis companies on equal ground with the hemp-derived companies because it just takes so much for them to get to market, the cannabis companies to get to market. In other states where cannabis is illegal, like North Carolina, they don't want intoxicating cannabis products to be made available. And that's why you see bans in states like Idaho and Utah that do not have legal cannabis. What this boils down to is that prohibition does not work and overregulation leads to workarounds.
Yeah, that makes sense that Delta 8 would be more popular in states that are illegal, one, like my state. So how is Delta 8 THC made from CBD?
So ideally, there are four steps to this process. First, there's the extraction of CBD. So CBD is extracted from hemp using various methods like CO2 extraction or ethanol or butane extraction. The next step is isomerization. So the extracted CBD is subjected to a chemical reaction known as isomerization. And this process involves altering the arrangement of atoms in the CBD molecule to create delta 8 THC. So after the delta 8 has been created, the next step should be purification, which is when this product is purified to remove any impurities or remaining chemicals from that process. Because when you're extracting the CBD using solvents like butane or ethanol, there can be some residual amounts of those solvents left over after isomerization. So during purification, you have to make sure that all of those solvents have been washed completely clean from the delta 8. And then the final step should be testing, quality control and testing to make sure that the final product meets safety standards and potency standards, and making sure that it is safe for consumption. However, because there's a lack of regulation, the purification step and the testing step is only going to be as good as the person making it. So if there's no rule saying that after you isomerize the delta 8, you have to purify it and test it, if companies are looking to cut costs so they can offer a cheaper product, or maybe they just don't care, they may not follow those steps, which means that the final product that you get has not been assured for quality, potency, or safety.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of stories of people who take Delta 8 products having not so great experiences. So, are these products safe?
Well, the truth is, we're really not sure. Yes, some manufacturers are taking the time to properly purify and test their products, but many aren't. And because there's no state agencies that are regulating this process, it's really tough to know if the product that you're buying online has been through the purification and testing process. And because the most common forms of Delta 8 are in vape pens and edibles, it's tough to know if what you have in front of you is safe to consume, because it could just look like a cartridge with oil in it or like a gummy.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. The vape pens, edibles, gummies. I was going to ask you, what product forms do you see Delta 8 in most often?
Well, I would say definitely the vape pens and the edibles. Vape pens are very popular. People want to be able to use them anywhere. Gummies are very popular as well. So they're very clandestine. You can kind of pop a gummy no matter where you are. So I would say vape pens and gummies are definitely the most popular for Delta 8. But another product that you see is hemp flower. So the buds from the hemp plant that have less than 0.3% THC that have been sprayed with a Delta 8 liquid. Now, personally, I think that this flour was sprayed on Delta 8 is pretty risky to consume, because you are now combusting that Delta 8 liquid that's been put on there, meaning that you are lighting it on fire and inhaling it into your lungs. And we do not know what the health effects of that are, especially in products that haven't been properly purified and tested. So you may remember several years ago, we had EVALI, which was the lung injury that was happening from unregulated vape carts. So these were situations where, in addition to the THC or whatever cannabinoids were being added to the vape cart, there were other types of products being added to make the oil look a certain way, to make it, come through a certain way when you're inhaling it from the vape pen. And it was those other components that ended up causing people injury. So it may not be that Delta 8 itself is unsafe, but it could be that the process that's being used to make it into a liquid, to spray it on flour, to put it in vape carts, may result in a product that is not safe to consume.
So, does Delta 8 have a different effect than Delta 9?
Well, this is really interesting because I personally have not used Delta 8. I'll be honest about that. I live in California. I have access to the real thing. But I do know quite a few people that have. And what they report is that it's a milder effect than Delta 9. So that the Delta 9 THC that's in the cannabis plant might make them feel overwhelmed or anxious, and that the Delta 8 is a more relaxing, less overwhelming effect. But before we recorded this, you and I were talking, and you were saying that people you've talked to that have tried Delta 8 have actually had the opposite experience, and that they've gotten extremely intoxicated, they've gotten a lot of anxiety. And what this tells me is that because it is an unregulated product, it's very possible that manufacturers are putting other things into these products in order to enhance the psychoactivity of Delta 8. So this could be some kind of speed or amphetamine analog, or some other chemical that they think people want because they want to get really high. But for some, this could end up giving them an anxiety reaction.
Yeah. And so it sounds like people should just avoid it until there are better regulations in place.
Ideally, yes. But look, I get it. I grew up in Indiana. It was very hard to get actual cannabis. And if I were still living in Indiana today and I had access to Delta 8, there's a good chance I would use it. I mean, I was ordering fake weed from the back cover of High Times magazine when I was a teenager and in my early 20s because I couldn't get access to the real thing. So I completely understand why someone in Indiana or in North Carolina who doesn't have access to natural cannabis would choose some of these hemp-derived cannabinoids. But as we say, caveat emptor, buyer beware, and understand that what you are buying likely has no testing, may not be purified, and may have things in it besides Delta 8 that you are unaware of because there's no rules about having to put all the ingredients on the label.
This is probably one of my most favorite episodes that we have done to date. So much good information in there that I think people need to hear because, again, there's information all over the place and we're going to shoot you straight. We're going to give you the real actionable advice that you can actually use. So as we close the chapter on today's Plant-Powered Odyssey, don't forget to saunter over to our YouTube haven, a flourishing garden of herbal wisdom. You are incredible viewers. You're the roots that nourish this vibrant community. If questions are budding or you simply just want to chat, don't hesitate. Reach out to us. You can drop us a line, info@mypersonalplants.com. You can hit us up on Instagram as well. Until our paths cross again, stay curious, stay green, and let the questions bloom.